Hello everybody, my name is and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be ranking the senses. Now, starting off with touch. This one's it's pretty nice, but there's a lot of things that aren't great to touch, and I feel like those are more noticeable. So let's go C tier. No, let's go B tier. Then taste. Pretty good. There's a lot of tasty things. I think this is an easy A tier. Smell. A lot of the things that you smell aren't very great, so I think this is going to be a C. Hearing. I love music. I don't know about you, but I do. And hearing's definitely an S. Vision? Ooh, that's also an S. I mean, there's so many nice things to look at. Paintings, things, outside. Yeah, that's an S tier. Alright guys, thanks for watching the video. Remember to smash that like button, hit the subscribe, and tune in for the next video. Why hasn't it ended? I think something went wrong.
Wanna learn some rock facts?
The typical thought is that humans have 5 senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. This grouping is usually credited to Aristotle, but we've discovered a lot more senses since his time. But first, some clarifications. What is a sense, and how do they work? A sense is some system where a specific signal is collected and converted to a signal in the brain. There are a couple of different ways that information can be collected, which is based on the type of protein receptor that's present. Proteins can be receptive to light, motion, chemicals, or temperature. From these 4, you can easily describe the 5 conventional senses. Sight is based off, obviously, light receptive proteins. Motion allows for hearing, and if you combine motion and temperature, you get touch. And chemoreception, chemical sensing, leads to taste and smell. Light is detected by a protein called opsin, which changes shape when it absorbs photons. Our eyes have 2 types of receptors. These are rods and cones. Rods collect low light or brightness information, and cones collect color information. So this sense of sight could be divided based on the information being collected about the light. This could make one sense into 2 senses, brightness and color, or it could be divided even further as each type of color, red, green, and blue receptors in the cones. So rather than there being a sense of one sight, there's instead 2 or 4 sights or senses of brightness and color, or alternatively red, green, and blue. Hearing is accomplished by sensing the vibration of your eardrum, which is vibrated by pressure differences in the air, aka what sound is. This sense can't really be divided farther into any other senses, but there are more senses than just this in your ear, and we'll get into that later. Taste is sensed by receptors on your tongue reacting with the chemicals in what you're eating. This sense could also be divided into 5 senses instead of 1, that being a sense for sweetness, a sense for saltiness, sourness, bitterness, and umami-ness. Smell is very similar to taste in that it is a type of chemoreception, except it's in your nose instead of your tongue. This could be divided as a sense for each type of receptor that's in your tongue, which would turn this one sense of taste into over 2,000 different senses of, different chemicals that you could possibly taste or possibly smell, But that's a radical position for there to be 2,000 senses from just this. This sense is achieved using receptors in your skin that relay signals based on tactile feedback. There are several different sensory structures that convey different types of information, and as such can be divided into many, many different senses. There's the sense of something touching you, just, light touch, but also a lot of pressure, hot and cold, which are different sensory receptors. And also commonly included in touch is pain and itchiness, but these are actually not motion-based senses like what touch would be considered. Rather, they are chemoreceptors. Pain detects the internal chemicals of broken up cells, and itchiness detects an irritant on your skin. This sense is responsible for letting you know which way is up, and is achieved by another organ that's in your inner ear. Essentially, there's some fluid in there and a bunch of hair-like receptors that can detect how that fluid is moving around in your inner ear, which this allows you to know which way is up, which allows you to balance. Your sense of balance is also aided by your vision, which is why it's a lot harder to balance with your eyes closed. Proprioception is the ability to tell where your body parts are relative to each other. This is achieved using motion receptors in your skin, muscles, ligaments, and tendons to know how much they are being activated and how that moves your body part. There are also receptors that detect the stretching of your lungs, stomach, and bladder, and these could be considered their senses in their own right, but I would consider them part of this one. There are stretch receptors that are in your artery walls that allow you to sense what your blood pressure is, depending on the forces that is required to keep them in their current form. And there are also chemoreceptors in your carotid artery that detect the relative chemical concentrations of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Thirst is a complicated sense. A lot of the perception of thirst is from various neurological processes, but there's also a distinct sense of intestinal osmotic pressure, aka the sensing of pressure in the intestines due to different concentrations of solutes that would correspond to a lack of water in your intestines. Hunger is another complicated sense, just like thirst. And, just like thirst, it's a combination of neurological processes that are occurring exclusively in your brain and sensory information gathered from outside the brain in the other parts of the body. There's a combination of two different types of sensing, chemoreception and motion receptors. Those two are sensing blood glucose levels and the stretchness of how full your stomach is.